Well, good evening and welcome to another Case Filters live session with me, Ruth Taylor. I'm hosting these sessions on behalf of Case Filters UK. We are speaking every month to some of Case's top photographers and ambassadors. And tonight, delighted to have with me Tomasz Przychodzień. Hopefully I got that right, Thomas. How did I do?
It was quite well, It's Tomasz Przychodzień.
Pretty close. I was just saying to Thomas before we started, he's confused me straight away because the surname that you'll see on the screen there apparently is not actually it's not actually. Do many people have trouble, Thomas? Is it just me?
No, it's like here I just put some random string of letters. It doesn't matter because probably most of people wouldn't be able to spell it correctly. Actually, when I was a bit younger, I was studying. I was meeting people from abroad, and I was telling them if they spell my surname properly, I'll buy them the most expensive alcohol from the bar. And so they, if they don't do it correctly, they can buy me cheapest beer. So
how many
beers?
You got a lot of beers. I was going to say,
a lot.
You didn't end up wasting much money. We're going to be chatting to Thomas just in a minute, but just before we start, for anybody that is here for the first time, we do these every month, and we are live on Facebook and we are live on YouTube as well. So feel free to use the chats in either of those. Interact throughout the evening. You can ask Thomas questions, and we'll pick and choose some of those, and just feel free to use them. It'll be really, really good to have your input. I'm seeing people on there already. Hi, Craig. It's nice to see you. Yeah, I'm sure there's a few more people in there as well. So it's going to be good. We're going to aim for around about 15 minutes, an hour. See how we get on, see how much we've got to talk about. But yeah, I think that's about it. This will be available as a replay afterwards as well. If you miss any, if you want to share it with your friends, anything like that, on both YouTube and the Facebook pages. So just something to keep in the back of your head. But we are going to launch straight into, as I said, I'm here with Thomas, who is a man of the mountains, multiple award-winning photographer. And I have to say, Thomas, your website, I haven't been on a website for a long time that when I first open it, I just go, wow, that's amazing. And you've got a spectacular website. Obviously,
really?
the fact I think that you opened straight up onto a very spectacular image is what kind of immediately drew me in. So very, very talented man. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you just because black and white spectacular images. I just love a bit of black and white, and I haven't actually spoken to anybody in particular who's really, really into that, but got some beautiful things, and looking forward to finding out a lot more about you and about your photographs. So just for anyone who doesn't know you, Thomas, let's just go to the beginning, which is always a very good place to start, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and when you first picked up a camera.
Okay, just a second. I would like to do some self-advertising.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
If you need a website, I did my website myself, like totally from scratch. So
well, if anyone needs a website, I highly recommend that. Anyone who's not been on it, I would tell you what it is, but actually I see it's your surname, so we'll maybe pop that into the chat.
And let surname.com, so probably we can have some links in the end. So
we'll pop something in the chat at the end, and you can see that. But yeah, no, go ahead, Thomas.
Okay, so about the beginning, I don't have this kind of story that most people say that I started when I was like 5 with film camera and stuff like
this.
Your
dad gave you a camera.
Yeah, exactly. I got the camera when I was like 8 for my communion. It was like old Minolta, also film camera, but I shot like 2 or 3 year olds, and this was my first journey with photography. Afterwards I was not interested in photography, but then I started to photograph when I was studying. It was connected with the mountains, of course. It was quite funny story because my friends from the university, they said that, let's go together, to the mountains, we can climb a bit, hike. I was like, nah, mountains, it's
too much
not
effort.
fun, too much effort, of course. It's tiring, it's nothing interesting, but then they said we can have some beers later. I was like, okay, let's go. So the beers convinced me, and the start was pretty difficult because my first mountain was Kościelec, which is like 2,155 meters tall, and we got to the pass just beneath the summit. the road was not so difficult, but then it started to be like more exposed terrain, and I told my friends I'm staying there because I was a bit afraid of the heights. And on my right side there was like a slope like 200 meters down, on the left side the same, and it was just a bit too much for me. So I let them go. I told them that well, let's wait for 1 hour, I'll be there. But then I saw a kid like 7 years old maybe, and he was just walking really quickly up, and I was like, okay, he can do it.
You were embarrassed.
Yeah, just hold my beer, and I went up, and then I thought, okay, it's possible to overcome some deficits, some fears, and I started to be more like a mountain person. I started to go there very often. I started to drag my friends who invited me to the mountains first, and then after a few times they were like, mountains again, come on. I was like the more mountain guided than they were. So the mountains became something important in my life. Then I started to shoot photographs. I just bought some cheap camera, like point and shoot. It was Canon, I don't know, maybe 2 megapixels, something like this. And I started to take hundreds, thousands of photos. It's like the same as you have this cheap camera. You go, for example, for a trip to Paris, you take 1,500 pictures of the Eiffel Tower, and then nobody's interested in watching this, including yourself. So it was just too much, shooting like everything without thinking of what you were shooting. But then after some time, I started to shoot a bit less. I started to think a bit more about my photography. Internet helped quite a lot. By that time, there were some portals in Poland that you could publish your photographs, and you can get some criticism, constructive or not, but some opinion, which is quite rare nowadays. So I posted there like a beautiful picture of sunrise. To me it was beautiful, but then somebody wrote me that, oh, the exposure is like bad, it's overexposed, the composition. And I was like, come on, this is like one of the most epic sunrises I have seen. So I just couldn't take it at first, but then I started to learn that it's good to listen to other people, whether they're right or not. But it helps you take your photography to the next level and take better photographs. And I started to improve. I started to think about composition, about the light, and well, here I am, here with you, doing an interview. And
so when you started out, you said you were in university, your friends took you up the mountains. These are obviously, is this in Poland? You got mountain ranges in Poland that you started off with,
Yeah, exactly. It was Tatra Mountains, my first mountain love, but then I went to other mountains like higher, lower, but yeah, it started in Tatra Mountains.
So, I mean, I've obviously on your website, I've been looking at your website quite a lot recently, and you've been to over 20 countries over the last. How many years have you been actually shooting then since those first ascents?
Around 15 years.
15 years, okay. And so tell me, how did you go from that first ascent, taking your camera up, taking thousands of pictures, to actually moving into the kind of place where you are now, which is, I mean, obviously it's a story of many years, but you're going out professionally, you're taking people out with you, you're shooting, spectacular images. What was the process turning pro, as it were, from those first days?
The process is that at the beginning you take a lot of images, then you start to take less images. You try to play with everything that is new. Like at the beginning it was like selective color, HDRs, this kind of thing.
Yes,
that I think I consider like really like shitty, and I cannot watch this kind of images. And if I saw one of my images shot 10 or 15 years ago, oh, this awful experience. I have those images somewhere, but I prefer not to get back to these images.
Don't look at them. Sometimes it's nice to look back and see how far you've come, though. I mean, obviously, you're shooting, a couple of thousand images every time you go up somewhere. And I mean, you said now that you only shoot a small number of images, or smaller, I assume. But I mean, the great thing, obviously, about digital, and you mentioned that you started off with film, but the great thing about digital is you can just take thousands and, you know, realize what's wrong. I mean, what is it about? I know you shoot film as well. Do you ever take film cameras up with you in order to kind of, you know, slow down the process and things like that?
Sometimes I do, but I try to learn how to slow down the process with digital camera and not to be like, you know, like tempted too much to take so many images that I can. It's a bit easier right now because I switched to Fuji camera, like medium format. So each row takes like 110 megabytes of space.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so the space becomes more limited,
Yes.
and you have to think a bit more about what you want to capture.
Absolutely. So when you go out now, you obviously travel far and wide and you take people, as I said, out on workshops. Is it all mountain type workshops that you go out on, or do you do a more general landscape, or have you kind of decided that mountains is your passion, mountains is what you want to share with other people?
Well, 99% I would say it's mountains. As for the seaside, maybe sometimes when I'm at the seaside, I have my camera, I can shoot something, but I don't do it usually. I mean, sometimes usually I think it's at Madeira. I'm doing some workshops there, so there's seaside, there are mountains, forests, so it's a bit different landscape that I usually shoot, but this is some addition, you know, to what I do, and not something I would like to focus on.
So, okay, let's talk then about the Karakoram, which I know you've been to twice. This is the mountain range that includes the K2. Is that correct? Is it the highest kind of mountain range in the world? I know you've kind of fallen in love with it. You've talked. I think you've called it a compositional feast in one of your blogs. One part of it anyway, which you know, which sounds amazing. I mean, first of all, tell people where it is who don't know. But then just talk to me about what it is about the range that has really kind of captured your heart.
Well, Karakoram is a mountain range in Pakistan. It's about 5,000 kilometers from my home, but it's like really deep in my heart. I've been there only twice, but you know, I think I'll return there as many times as possible. I have this plan that every second year I will come to Karakoram. Maybe when my kids will be a bit older, maybe it will be like every year. But for me right now, I have small kids, so it's a bit difficult, you know, to leave home for 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks to go there. But fortunately, I do workshops, so this is quite a good excuse, you know, to tell your wife that I'm earning. I have to bring some money home, so I have to go. It's much easier than telling that, you know, I'm going to Karakoram for 3 weeks just to shoot some photos for Instagram, Facebook, you know.
It's just great that you actually love it as well.
Yeah, it's, you know, I came to the point that it doesn't make sense to do something you don't love. You know, I used to do some wedding photography, you know, like this kind of things, like business portraits. But you know, then when you do too much of this kind of photography, you earn money only on this. Then you don't have strength, don't have like motivation to take the camera and do something for yourself, like go to the mountains. I was tired with wedding photography, so I just decided to quit it.
I mean, it's one of those things, obviously, it's not that easy to make a living out of full-time landscape photography. I know a lot of people, they do wedding photography, you know, the kind of stuff that I suppose pays the bills. But being able to actually go full-time and do workshops and, you know, go and visit the mountains, which is what you love, must be amazing. I mean, did the last couple of years with all the restrictions and things, I mean, obviously they'll have thrown out a lot of your plans, but were you able to kind of change what you do a little bit to get through that?
For sure, it was much more difficult, you know, to travel. Like, you know, for the first time I visited Karakoram, it was just, you know, buying ticket, you know, getting a visa and finding a local travel agency who handled all the logistics in Pakistan. And you know, the second time, you know, after 3 months of waiting, some people from my team got their visas rejected because they didn't pay enough, and you know, they changed the amount of money you need to pay. In the meantime, you couldn't just pay the difference, you know. And we're like 2 months before the trip, and and we already waited 3 months to have a decision initially, so it was quite difficult. But then it turned out that the guy at the travel agency knows Pakistani ambassador in Thailand, who knows ambassador in Poland, and after 2 days we got the visa, so it was okay. But then it turned out that after 2 weeks that they put Poland on the blacklist, so they forbid people from Poland coming to Pakistan. I don't know why, because we had like 500 cases per day, and when we had 25,000, it was possible. So it was just some like random thing. I don't know why.
Yeah,
they put like Poland, Belgium, Somalia, whatever, these countries totally not related to each other. But then after 2 weeks it changed. It was okay to come to Pakistan. Then after 2 more weeks we got our flight ticket cancelled because Qatar Airways thought that Pakistan is too dangerous, so we had to rebook the tickets. We finally got on the plane to Dubai. So we had like 3 tests, COVID tests in the meantime. We got off the plane. We had the flight cancelled to Skardu, which meant that we had to travel another 22 hours, which made it like 46 hours to get to the mountains. Okay, then we went for the trek. We shoot great images. Then when we came back, the first thing that we heard was that our flights were cancelled, and we had the opportunity. We had the opportunity to travel to Afghanistan. It was like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks before everything started in Afghanistan last year. But then we chose another flight to Oman, Turkey, Czech Republic, and then passed to Poland, which took us 76 hours to return. So
oh my goodness.
It was pretty different story than the first time. So yeah, it can be complicated, but if you have enough motivation, you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, when you go on these trips, do you go out with a shot in mind? I mean, do you go out with a shot in mind, and if you don't get that, are you disappointed, or do you just kind of take them as they come and kind of go out and think, well, whatever I get is what I get, and if I get a great shot, then fantastic. But what is it that makes a successful trip for you? Is it about the image, or is it about the kind of experience you've had, and then if you get a shot, then absolutely fantastic?
Even if I don't get a good shot, the experience, just being in the mountains, just trekking, climbing, it's always amazing. So at first, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, probably I would be a bit frustrated that I didn't bring anything and I need to update my Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. But now it's mostly about being there, connecting a bit with the landscape, with people. So it's a bit different. But as for the planning of my shots, I try to plan as much as possible. Like the forecasts. When you are a mountain photographer, you're also like kind of like meteorologist, so you need to know a bit more than a regular person about the weather. But still, it's unpredictable. The thing I like about the mountains is that even if you check the forecast, like 4 different forecasts, you check everything on Google Earth, you use applications like photo tools, like AR, this kind of things. But then you go to the mountains and it's totally different. You can have like a forecast with a small cloud and like mostly sunny, and then it turns out that the small cloud is covering exactly the sun, so there's no light, nothing.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of the mountains. If everything was easy, probably everybody had the same shots. It's and it can be discouraging, but also it's very rewarding. When you go there for like 20th time and finally you get like a good image. Makes me even more happier.
Absolutely. I mean, the mountains are very much their own master. I don't think you can actually, you're never entirely sure what they're going to do. I mean, speaking of climbing mountains, obviously I was saying I was looking at your shots, and it's very easy to get inspired by images like you've got, but I personally have zero experience in mountains. But I mean, mountain safety wise, yourself, do you have qualifications? I mean, I know you do some technical climbs to get to some of your spots, but do you shoot in easy to access spots as well, or what? Just around mountain safety, what would you say about climbing alone and kind of just some basic things that you should be aware of if you're looking to get the kind of shots that you're getting there?
Actually, I'm not really climbing. Maybe doing sometimes like via ferrata roads, a bit more difficult than usual treks.
Is that the rungs?
Yeah, exactly. The ladders, the steel ropes, this kind of things. But it's not that difficult. It's not that dangerous. But yeah, also when you carry like 20 kilos on your back, it can be difficult.
Yeah.
Especially most people around carry like 20-liter backpacks. This kind of small things, and they look at you like an idiot. Yeah, but I wouldn't say that I do like really difficult climbs, because I came to some point that it was I need to make a choice. If I want to climb or photograph. So I chose photography, because you cannot climb like 7,000 meters high mountains with a backpack of 20 or 30 kilos. When you add equipment, it would be like 35 or 40. I don't know. But just just too much.
So
even now it's quite training. Yeah.
Do you climb alone, or do you tend to climb with people? I mean, is that the safe way to do what you're doing?
Well, I started mostly like alone, but then I started to take people for workshops. So it was not, the difficulty got a bit lower, because I cannot risk,
their lives.
their lives.
Yeah.
I can risk mine, but this is all I can. But I rarely go with somebody. Sometimes maybe like 2 or 3 times a year, I take one of my friends, and we go for some more difficult routes. Like next year I'm planning to go back to Karakoram, Snow Lake, and climb Bral Dubrak, which is like a peak of 6,200 meters. So this is this kind of like adventure I wouldn't take my clients with, at least for the first time. But
yes.
Yeah. But as for the safety, this is pretty difficult, because you can do everything like safely, but I learned a lot of things by making mistakes. I wouldn't say that some of my ascents were safe, and I did really a lot of mistakes, but you can minimize it. But a lot of things in the mountains come with experience. You have to go there again and again. It's not like you can go there for the first time and do everything correctly.
Yeah,
it's like about learning the logistics. We had participants in our workshops who bought like equipment for, I don't know, like 2,500 pounds, and they went with us. And the first night they were too cold, and they say we want to come back. It was a bit too much for them, because they were not used to sleeping in the mountains.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you were talking about the weather earlier on, and obviously the kind of shots you get, the dramatic shots, tend to be the ones very often with the worst kind of weather. You've got the low cloud, you've got the snow on a lot of your peaks as well. But are there situations when you're up a mountain when you think, I'd really like to get this shot, but actually it's going to be dangerous? I mean, when does it become foolish to carry on chasing a shot when you're up the mountain?
It's kind of the difficult
you
question.
You just go for it.
It
if you see a
depends,
lightning storm coming in and you think, oh, that's going to make a great shot, but actually it's maybe not very safe. Maybe I should just put the camera away for an hour.
Actually, the first time I took my son with me to the mountains to sleep in a tent, we went with my wife to Dolomites, and we pitched a tent at 2,500 meters, and he was not even 2 years old, and after pitching the tent, like 10 minutes later, we had like huge hailstorm. It was really like horrible. The snow was banging on our tent, and it was like really loud. And I was like, no way he's going to sleep in a tent like next time.
You wouldn't want to come back, yeah.
Yeah, but he was like so happy that when we were taking the tent back, he was like, no, I want to stay. So these were difficult conditions, but I guess it also depends. The risk line, it depends on what kind of shots you can get.
Yeah.
If I see chance for like one shot in a million, I would probably be willing to risk a bit more, but not like like risking my life.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're in a storm in the mountains, you can make it a bit more safe or not.
Yeah. So how do you do that? How would you make it safe if you're up there? I mean, is it all about just the gear that you've got with you, or knowing where to shelter?
Yeah, knowing how where to shelter, it's really important. Like when you're in the mountains, let's say it's like minus 20 degrees. You don't have to anywhere to hide. You can just dig a snow cave, and hide inside, and you have a temperature of like 0 degrees or -1. So relatively, it will be like quite warm. It's not warm, but not that bad. So yeah. So some experience helps in this case. But I would say that if somebody wants to start with the mountains, it would be good, to start like slowly. Like, for example, go camp in the forest and then see if you need something. If you miss something in your tent, just somewhere close to the civilizations. If something happens, you can get some help.
Yeah.
Then try a bit higher, more difficult conditions, and after a few years, I think you will develop some schemes what
skills.
to do. Yeah, mountain skills, exactly.
I mean,
if something happens.
Yeah, is there courses that people can actually do mountaineering skills? I know there's like winter mountaineering courses people can do. I mean, is that a wise thing to do before heading up? Especially I suppose in the winter.
Yeah, of course. I took part quite recently, actually. After I climbed some 5,000ers, I attended some winter winter climbing course, which is really really great because it helps you predict avalanche risk, this kind of things that they're a bit unpredictable, but it helps you learn what to do in case something happens.
So, I mean, obviously, we're talking about big mountains up here. Not everybody has access to big mountains. Quite a lot of people have access to some hills, maybe some kind of smaller ranges, though. How would you say you go about capturing the drama? I mean, if people don't have the Karakoram to go to, can you get good shots without having these big climbs? What do you look for? I mean, is it all about light and shade? What is it for you that makes a dramatic shot?
Yeah, to me, it's mostly about the weather. For me, good weather is usually almost 100% overcast, which just this tiny hole in the clouds through which the light beams comes, and just have this like pointy light. Just a small
You'd like
bit.
it in Scotland then, yeah? 100% overcast with a very small chance of the sun poking through.
Let's make it 95 and it would be perfect. But yes, well, Scotland is one of the places I also wanted to visit. So maybe this year, maybe next year, but surely I'll come there, probably in winter with my tent. But yeah, let's see. But anyway, for me as a photographer, the good weather is bad weather. When you're a tourist, when you have clear sky, sun shining, it's perfect. But you cannot get a good shot, in my opinion, this kind of weather. Or it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
But when it's cloudy, especially after the storm, when the air gets cleaner and the colors are more vivid. I mean, I shoot in black and white, but sometimes I also do color.
Yeah.
But the light is more dramatic, and you can have much better results. I really like it, like this kind of dramatic way of presenting landscape, because it's something that's not that common. Like when you browse through Facebook, Instagram, like most of the images are very saturated, like like colorful, and in my opinion, it goes in a very bad direction. It's like imagine that 10 years ago when you had like old phones, like I don't know, like Nokia, like the first ones with the camera, you could get some like quite natural colors. It was not changed so much, and with newest smartphones at the beginning you get like such saturated colors. The algorithms they boost saturation a lot. So if later on somebody processes those images and puts even more saturations, like the only value of those images is saturation color. So maybe that's why I do black and white. Just some kind of like rebellion against the colors. Or I don't really like color images so much.
I was going to ask you about black and white, because obviously you nearly all the shots that I've seen of yours are black and white. I mean, is this to try and convey the drama of the hills, or is it to kind of try and simplify things? Obviously, mountains they're one of those subjects that are just, they're very majestic, they're very grand, and black and white kind of sometimes focuses that. Is that why you like it so much? It just conveys the drama better?
Yeah, this is one of the reasons. Actually, stripping the image out of color, it helps focusing on what's important to me in photography, which is light, contrasts. Like the quality of light and composition. They are like the two most important aspects of each landscape photograph, in my opinion. Well, photography itself, it's like photographers, it's like painting with light, so the light is most important thing to me.
Yeah.
And usually when you have like the saturated images, they distract you from what's important, in my opinion. Often those images are really nice, but when you look at the composition, it's
not so good.
it's
Yeah.
not so good, and people don't think about this, because when you browse Instagram, there are like small images, like 1,000 pixels,
Yeah.
and it's really difficult to draw attention with black and white photograph. That's why probably people do it more colorful and just to chasing for likes and
yeah. I mean, Instagram
fame,
yeah, it's one of those things where people put their photographs up, like professional photographers like yourself, they put them up because they have to very often, not because it's at all the best means of showing off their photographs. I think your kind of shots would look spectacular, 4 meters wide on a wall somewhere where you can see them properly. It doesn't really do it justice at all, but I know social media is one of those things that you feel you just have to put them up, which I love browsing through it and seeing everyone's stuff. But I mean, to keep it on black and white, when you're out in the mountains, do you kind of see in black and white? Are you looking for subjects that are just going to work really well, really contrasty things like that? Is that how you kind of look at the mountains just now?
Yeah, I totally see the world in black and white. For me, it's quite difficult, to imagine like how the particular image in color would look like. Even though I see in color, I kind of like have my mind switched to black and white, and I always think about black and white. It's my first choice, and there are sometimes situations when I think, okay, I cannot do this black and white. I would like to, but it has to be color, But this is like the last resort, if black and white doesn't work, okay, let it be color. But it's like one image in 100,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know you've got some shots on. I think it was in Iceland where the colors were just very, very subtle, and it worked so well. It just wouldn't have worked that well in black and white. So I suppose it's a case of just seeing, black and white works, 90% of the time. But there are images that, to do them justice, you have to stick with their colors.
I also think that it's good to to match the post-processing to the image content. When I don't know if you're talking about the same images from Iceland, those fields with ships.
Yes.
Example, it's like when I was post-processing them, I wanted them to look more like a painting, like really soft, because the landscape was like mostly like some grass. It was like really soft and gentle, and I tried to match the post-processing to the content of the image. And when I shoot mountains are more like, I don't know, like dangerous, but like very pointy, very rigid, very like it's not like for me, they're not like a fun place. They're a fun place, but it's not like like this kind of mountain shots that you see like in color, like looking like postcards. I think of mountains like something like medieval cathedrals. It's like a place when you go inside, but you are not really like invited guest. They are
You're
just
not in
there.
control. Yeah.
They're just there, and they will remain there for centuries. But mountains, they don't care about you, and it's only you in the mountains, and you can try to speak to the mountains, but they are not going to respond. So it's like in the mountains. I'm already answering my own questions, but you know, in the mountains, it's like you can have some conversation with yourself. So find out something about you, about what you want, who you are, and learn something that you wouldn't be able to learn anywhere else. So yeah.
So do you think that's why people, you know, you said you take groups up? I mean, do you find when you have groups up there that they go up maybe for the photography, but actually there's something about the mountains that, because like you go up and something kind of changes you. So you kind of, something happens. Do you find that with groups that you take up, people have different experiences like that?
Yeah, I think, you know, people who come with me, they usually come for the mountains, also for not only photographic experience,
Okay.
but all the things around. Because I tend to do my workshops a bit differently than most people do. It's not like we're getting on the bus from our hotel with breakfast and Wi-Fi. We're just sleeping on the mountains on 2,000-3,000 meters above sea level. So this is kind of workshops like of the beaten path, a bit, you know, like more challenging. It's not like we want to save money on accommodation, but just, you know, to give people a bit
The experience.
more full experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about post-processing there in color. When it comes to black and white, what's your general approach to that? Do you, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you do some contrast and stuff like that, but do you try and keep it natural as much as you can in black and white? Or do you kind of just push what you're doing in order to convey, you know, the feelings that you're wanting to put across?
It's difficult to keep it natural when you when you don't see it in black and white, but
That's true.
yeah, but still, you know, I'm this kind of person that is quite I don't really like too much post-processing. I don't use healing brush at all. If something's in landscape, I leave it there, unless it's like my dirty sensor or something like this.
Yes.
I try to keep it like simple, just boosting contrast, sometimes doing some small vignette, you know, just enhancing light, but the light that was there, not something like to be added in post-processing. Usually my processing of my images for Facebook, Instagram, it's like 10 or 15 minutes. It's not much per image, but then when I make a print, it can be 5-6 hours. Basically, the result is almost the same. You wouldn't see different light or whatever, but I just work on tiny details, like, you know, like to dodge and burn, like each crack in the wall, so to make it a bit more three-dimensional on the print.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work, but you can see it only on printed media, so not in the internet.
So you print your own stuff. I mean, how long did it take you to realize that you can't actually have the same process for kind of what goes up on the internet and what comes out of the printer? I mean, obviously, you're saying it's a very different process. You take a lot longer to bring out those details. Is that something that you just learned by doing, or did you know that it was going to be a very different kind of post-processing process?
Yeah, I mostly learned this by doing, but I also, you know, consulted some people who print. I watched some videos like by Mark Metternich about sharpening, which is like really useful for preparing images for print. But you know, a lot of things come up, you know, with experience. When you choose a particular paper, you know, you would sharpen the images for the specific paper, and for other paper it would work differently. So so, you know, the more you print, the more you learn, and it's like, you know, some parallel world to photography. It's like I thought that I know everything about photography at one point, and then it came to printing, and it was like
a whole new world.
yeah, twice that much, you know, just printing. It's crazy, but I still think that I have a lot to learn, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
to
even
prepare it correctly.
the different papers and everything else. I was again looking at the prints that you offer on your shop. Was it only a few? So how do you choose an image for print? Obviously, you've got a lot of images, which to my mind would make amazing prints, but you've chosen a select few to offer, and you say that you don't actually offer every image for print. How do you choose, and what makes a good print?
Well, actually, I just started with the shop, so there are not so many images
Okay.
available. But
There will be more.
But I don't have any particular way of choosing images
The ones you like
for print.
best.
Sometimes I just process image. I think, okay, it's going to look great printed, and I try to print it, and if it's good, I put it on my website. So,
have you ever printed something large, or do you tend to kind of stick with the kind of same ratio each time?
Printing large was a bit difficult for me because my printer was A3+, so not that big.
You're doing it at home, yeah.
Yeah, I prefer to have like whole process like from start to beginning, like from beginning to end. Like shooting image, then processing it, printing, and just everything done by myself. But I have a good print house close to my place, so if I want to print something bigger, I can go there. I can do the printing myself, so it's quite a good deal with them.
Yeah.
And I printed like 1.5 meters or a bit less than 2 meters images, and I did it for the first time last year for some photo competition in Poland. And before I didn't think that size matters that much, but then I saw my images like this big, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, shots like this in particular, I love a large black and white print, so I can just imagine seeing some of the peaks, like you say, printed out 2 meters wide. It must just be a whole different experience than seeing them, on an A4, which is what you usually see them on.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think that for most people it would be a bit too much, and not all the people have
you need a
so
very
much
large
space.
house.
You need it, but that's why I don't print it, because mostly people wouldn't like to buy it.
Special request only.
Yeah, of course. But for myself, probably I just bought a house, so maybe maybe I would try to print something bigger also.
Yeah.
Myself.
And we've been talking about the Karakoram, obviously, and you've been to Iceland, which you mentioned as well, the Dolomites. You shot, I think you said, in over 20 countries. Is there any kind of a favorite place that you've got, and is there anywhere maybe that you'd really quite like to visit and haven't made it to yet? You mentioned Scotland before, but is there anywhere else that you'd really, really like to go and haven't been there yet?
As for new places, I always thought about Patagonia, but then when I went to Karakoram, I just discovered that there's so many places that are not so well known as K2 area. I've been twice only to K2 area, and also to Hushe Valley, but there are at least like 5 or 6 valleys in the Karakoram I would like to visit. So I think that's enough for me for next 10 years. And I was kind of thinking that Karakoram became my photographic home. So it's like exploring your neighborhood. For some people it's like shooting like some forests just outside of their home, and to me, I would like to focus, on the area of Karakoram, and come back there more often, just to have like this kind of feeling that I shot everything there, what I wanted, not just, to travel to like each year a different location, like, Patagonia, Dolomites, Karakoram, New Zealand. It's quite difficult, to know those places well if you travel like every year somewhere else. So yeah, I will focus there.
So you mean a lot of landscape photographers I've talked to, I've said the same thing, that rather than just going to different countries all the time, they very much like having generally a more local area that they go back to time and again and capture it in different seasons and things like that. I mean, do you still shoot locally? Do you go to the kind of more local mountain ranges and still try and get different shots from there? Or is it more a case of you kind of travel outside the country now to do that stuff?
I live in Warsaw right now, so shooting locally would mean like shooting forests. There are no mountains, no mountains around, so the nearest mountains are like 400 kilometers from my home.
Okay, so nothing's
really
local in that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 5 hours drive or 4.5. But yeah, sometimes I go to the Polish mountains 4, 5, 6 years, 6 times per year. So I go there, but the problem is that when I travel first time to the Dolomites, then the mountains in Poland, they start to seem like small, not so impressive.
Yes.
And then I went to the Karakoram, and like nothing is impressive anymore. So
exactly, yeah.
So this is some kind of like trap, for a landscape photographer. You see more beautiful things, and then you don't appreciate so much the things that you considered beautiful before.
Yeah.
Of course, Poland is really beautiful, but then I think if I would have like, I don't know, like 2 years left, probably I would spend it in Karakoram, not in Poland.
Yeah.
Life is short, so you have to choose.
You've gone to the biggest place, and there's nowhere kind of bigger than that. I mean, you mentioned as well about beauty being in the details. I mean, in terms of kind of maybe more intimate shots, do you shoot anything like that? Is there anything that draws your photographer's eye apart from the mountains? I know you've been in Madeira, you've shot, I think, the trees and things in Madeira. Is that something that you do like as well? Is that something that kind of floats your boat like the mountains do?
Kind of, it was something a bit different, and I always say that it's good to do something different from time to time. So I don't usually shoot like these intimate landscapes, like focus on leaves and rocks and whatever, Actually, I don't really like this kind of images, because I had this impression that, like it's quite popular right now, and there are people who are doing only this kind of shots, like, put some leaves on a parking lot, spray some water on this, and
it's good for practice if you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is. But this is some nice addition, when you have like a photo series like from Trango Towers, just to have some shots with details of rocks. It's good addition, but I don't like make it like something like main and like important in my photography.
Yeah. The mountains are your main thing. I mean, if there's anybody out there listening who's maybe done a bit of landscape photography and is thinking, I'd really, really quite like to get some really good mountain shots like that, is there any advice that you would give them, either safety or just something that you've learned about, if you're starting out in mountains, what's something they should know?
It's difficult, be prepared, do shoot as many images as you can, and then try to think what you like and try to develop your own style, because this is really difficult right now, because those portals I was talking about before, where you could get some criticism about your images, they no longer exist, and on Facebook, Instagram, it's really, really hard, to have something constructive on your photos. So it's really difficult, to develop your own style right now, when you are just, drowned in those images, like colorful, saturated, I have this idea that, most of the images I see, even from like very famous photographers, if they have like 1 million fans on Instagram or whatever, they look the same. They're just the same versions of the same image, and there's no difference in style. And people try to copy what they saw in Facebook, Instagram. So try to do something yourself, and even though people wouldn't like it, it's your own photography, it's your own way of seeing world, and it's more precious than having likes on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Instagram and Facebook, it is good for inspiration, but like you say, do you think it's more dangerous that people go on it and they just see all the same kind of shots and then they try and copy it? Or do you think actually there is an element where you can actually get inspired by it? Or are you the kind of person that would just, if you could, you would just, leave it all together and ignore it?
Yeah, it's kind of dangerous, because I saw a lot of people, especially like in the Dolomites. You go to Lago de Braias. This is this kind of lake, with the boats.
Yes.
And like almost every time I saw somebody in a yellow jacket wearing a hat,
Somebody's posing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So people, they see, say, 10 different shots from the Dolomites. They go to 10 locations, just repeat the images, and I would prefer to stay at the same lake for 1 week and see what I can get from there. I think it would be much more valuable. So yeah, this is really difficult to learn right now, and to have somebody who inspires you. Fortunately, there are people who do something different, and they have to have Instagram, because even if you don't like, I'm not a big fan, but you have to do some, I don't know, marketing. You have to get some people to show your art too. So this is the necessity. But apart from likes and this kind of like shallow interactions, sometimes you can learn something. You can have good conversations. It happened to me a few times. So it's not all that bad. And actually, I like Instagram, for example, for being some kind of like business card. If you meet somebody, you show them your Instagram, and more or less you can say if those images are good or bad. Just to have some kind of like impression.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody has Instagram, so even if people are doing something like not digital, they have to show their work. So like people like I don't know if you've heard of him, like Kurt Moser. He's calling himself light catcher. He does wet plates from the Dolomites. So
okay, that's different. I like the sound of that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, to me personally, I think I will also try to do some old photography techniques. Like I'm learning right now the pigment prints, just to try to undigitalize my images. You shoot it digitally, and then you put it on paper using some old techniques. So it sounds like fun, and I think it's quite valuable. So also this kind of things you can see on Instagram. So so you just have to know where to look.
There is good stuff in there if you know where to get it. I mean, let's just talk for a couple of minutes about kits. I was reading one of your blogs, and you were talking about having a couple of tripods and at least a couple of cameras as well. You obviously don't travel particularly light, although I'm sure you try and keep it as light as possible. When you are up in the mountains, what do you bring up with you? What do you take with you, kit-wise?
My problem is that I'm kind of like perfectionist. So if I can take something more to make my images better, I would take it, even if it weighs like additional 2 or 3 kilos. So it's not as light as it can get. But I would like to have this impression that I'm coming down from the mountain, and I took this 500 millimeter lens, and I didn't miss the shot. Mostly it's like you carry this kind of gear up, and you don't get to use it. But then
you'd rather have it though, just in case.
Yeah, of course. This one time comes, and then I would regret that I didn't take it. So as long as I'm able to carry all this stuff up, I will do it. But it would probably in I don't know 10 years, for 15 years, I will be 50, 60. It's not going to be possible. So
everything will be very lightweight by then. Everything will be.
Yeah, right.
Do you shoot? Do you take kit up that is as light as you can get it? Do you shoot mirrorless? Do you take kind of the more lightweight options with you?
Well, I was not a big fan of mirrorless because there was like too much electronics, and it was not so weatherproof as DSLRs. But I switched to mirrorless, and right now my mirrorless camera weighs more than my DSLR. So the Fuji is quite heavy. So yeah,
it's not that much lighter, is it at all?
So yeah, it's heavier. The GFX. It's a heavy camera.
It's a big camera. Yeah, it is a big camera. So lens wise, what do you take up with you? What kind of range do you shoot?
Well, for Fuji, they don't have like very wide lenses. So I have 30 to 64, which is a bit wider because of the medium format sensor. So it would make it like 24 millimeters, something like this. Then 45 100, 100 200, and I just bought some kind of adapter for my Nikon lenses, and I can use 200 to 500 millimeter Nikon lens on my Fuji. So basically 24-500, but mostly I shoot with longer lenses, like 200 millimeter equivalent, like for full frame.
Okay.
Because I tend to crop like very tightly. So I mean, I used to call my images from the mountains like portraits. So it's a bit similar to the portrait, you know, when you crop it very tightly, mountains are a bit bigger, a bit more intimidating, and it's like tells you a bit more about the mountain, about how it feels to be there, which is quite difficult in landscape because landscape photography it's like this kind of images that you take a look at and then you forget, and it's hard to say what are the landscape images that I remember and I really liked from other photographers. Usually it's because of this, there is no human on the image, so even if you take like the worst quality, badly cropped, poorly eaten image of poor girl from India, it would be much more appealing because there's a human there, there is a story, and you start with some feeling to that photograph, and it's quite hard to develop feelings to landscape photograph. So
that's interesting because most people, I assume, starting out would think, I'm going to shoot a big landscape, I'll take a wide lens with me. But actually, you and what a lot of mountain photographers do is, they go for the telephoto, because you're right. When you fill the frame like that, it's quite intimidating. It's quite, it's quite in your face, and actually, that is actually putting across the characteristic of the mountain, and I suppose of what you feel when you're up there as well. So that's a good tip, I suppose, for people. Don't just when you're starting off, assume it'll be the wide angle, but actually get a longer focal length.
Yeah, it can be a wide angle. A lot depends on what you really like, what's your style of seeing, of experiencing the landscape. I know a lot of photographers who use wide angles, and they do it perfectly. But I had this lens, like Samyang 10 millimeters for full frame, and it was so wide that when I took it to the Dolomites, those huge mountains, they become just like this small,
That's not what you want.
Yeah, exactly. You can see everything, but you see nothing. So
so it's all about what you're wanting to portray in your image. Yeah. Sticking on kit, obviously you're a Case Filters ambassador. I know you went back to using filters recently.
Yeah.
Do you have a go-to filter that you always take up on the mountains with you? Is there something that you tend to use a lot of the time?
Yeah, there are two filters I take all the time. One is polarizer, and the other is ND filter, ND 1000, because these are the filters that you cannot emulate in post processing. It's like polarizer is really useful, especially when you shoot some water, like reflections. It also enhances a bit colors. For me, it's not that important, but it helps, and you cannot do it in Photoshop. Same for ND filter, but with ND filter, you have to be like very cautious, because a lot of people, they buy this kind of filters and then put the filter on their cameras, like for every shot, like you see the tiny cloud on the sky, and then you shoot like 3-minute exposure, which makes the cloud disappear, and it doesn't make sense. But you just have to know when to use those filters. It's really difficult to learn, and it takes some time. For me, I take filters with me, but I don't use it so often. But I would also say at the same time that these are like essential. This is essential gear for me. So without filters, I would miss a lot of shots. And almost every time my each trip expedition, there's this 1 or 2 moments or 3 when I think, okay, I need to take the filter, and without the filter, there wouldn't be anything out of this photograph.
How do the polarizers affect black and white shots? I mean, obviously color, we know how they work on color, but in terms of black and white, is it just a case of boosting the contrast more, darkening the sky down? Does that work quite well for the black and white moods that you're going for?
Yeah, especially darkening the sky. You know, when you have the sky like perfectly clear without any clouds, darkening it helps to focus a bit more on the mountain. You know,
Yeah.
You don't need to add any vignettes or whatever. You get it straight from the camera. So.
Yeah. And again, you're seeing in black and white, so you're thinking when you're putting the filters on, this is how this is going to affect this in black and white, not just what I'm seeing, because obviously you're seeing in color, but are you thinking all the time, this is how it's going to actually look when I convert it?
Yeah, exactly.
I've answered my own question.
yeah, but you know, with the polarizer, the thing is that you have to be careful when you use wide-angle lenses. Maybe that's why I don't use it, because there can be uneven polarization.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just know what you're doing. Practice and see how it works. I mean, just before we go briefly, I just realized we've been talking for an hour, which went past very quickly. I know you're exhibiting, or you're going to be going to the Jurassic Photo Festival, which is coming up very soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
This is a photographic event in Poland, in southern Poland. As all the events, you know, there will be a lot of companies like presenting their own products, like filters, you know, cameras. It's a great place, you know, to meet some people who are interested in photography, you know, some fellow photographers, hear some stories. You know, I'll be doing some kind of a presentation from the Karakoram, so good place to learn also.
Yeah.
Other different perspectives on photography. You know, like even for me, I'm still learning. You know, it's you know, the first time I went to the Dolomites, I thought that I know almost everything about landscape photography. I went with Tomasz Kruk, photographer from Poland, also doing this kind of like old photography techniques. But anyway, I thought I know everything, but then I saw that he just looks for different things in landscape. He has different logistics, and I learned, you know, so much. Just like amazing, you know. That's why I'm not a big fan of like YouTube, because first of all, it's hard to find any good material there to learn, and also you cannot learn just by watching things. You know, you have to just go out and
do it.
And do it. That's why, you know, I'm convincing people to participate in workshops. Maybe not my workshops, you know, just whatever. Go out with somebody who knows what he's doing or she's doing, and but also to learn from other people who are at the same level, you know, because you can learn really a lot, even if those people they don't know photography so well, but they see the world differently. You know, everybody is different, so those differences really can help.
Yeah, you can always learn something
better.
Yeah. Do you know the dates of anyone watching this is in Poland? Do you have the dates of the festival?
It's next weekend. So
next weekend.
So it's starting on 25th, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think people can obviously hop onto Google and have a look for that. But Thomas, that's about all we've got time for tonight, I think. So we're going. I know you did. Thomas was just saying before we started, this is his first interview in English. So thank you. It's an honor to be able to speak to you, and hopefully you understood most of what we're talking about.
No worries.
But you know, thank you for
that.
I
was just answering randomly, you know. I didn't know what you were saying at all.
Seemed to work. I don't think anybody realized. This, as I said at the beginning, will be available as a replay just shortly after we finish. If you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, I think both of those platforms it'll be available. So you can check that out if you want to watch it again. If you want to share it with anyone, do feel free to do that. I will be back next month. I'm not sure who I'm speaking to yet, but we'll be back. So keep an eye on the Case Filters Global Facebook page, their Instagram page as well. We'll give you some details when we get them. Will be the same time, hopefully next month. So that's about it from me. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for everyone that was in the chat there. And Thomas, thank you as well. And until next month, I hope everyone has a good rest of the evening. And we'll see you again. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys. And if you want to shoot me a message or contact me, you know, even if it's Instagram,
Yeah, I meant to say as well, just before we go, Thomas, we meant to mention your website. Do you want to tell people how they can find you on there?
Oh, this is a bit difficult, but
tell you what, try
yeah, we'll
popping into
post
the
it in
comments. Yes,
Yeah.
I'll put that in the comments just before we go. Actually, I'm just gonna PRZY. Am I doing well?
PRZYCHODCIEN. Yeah,
.com.
Let's see if it works.
Let's see if this works. That is me sticking that perfectly up. If you can see that, is that right, Thomas?
Great. Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Or just Google Tomasz Przychodzień online, and you'll be able to get him on there as well. But anyway, that's where you can find more. And honestly, check out his website. It's a beautiful website. And as I said at the beginning, if you're wanting a website, a little plug, he did design this himself. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. I'm definitely going to be hopping on to the shop a little bit later on, because I'm seeing stuff that I fancy for myself. So anyway, we're going to leave it there anyway. Have a good night, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Okay, thank you.